My wife nearly caused a wreck, so I made her ride in the back seat. I know how that sounds. I know exactly how it reads on the screen right now, and I can already hear what some of you are thinking. But I need you to understand something before you write me off completely. This wasn't about control. This wasn't about being petty or cruel or trying to put her in her place. This was about survival, about making it home in one piece, about the fact that I genuinely, truly believed that if I had to endure one more drive with her in that passenger seat, something bad was going to happen. This all went down over New Year's, and even now, weeks later, the tension in our house hasn't fully dissolved. It's like smoke from a fire you can't quite locate. You know it's there, you can smell it, but you can't find the source to put it out. Let me back up. My wife, Sarah, and I have been married for 9 years. We have 2 kids, a son who just turned 13, and a daughter who's 10. For the most part, we're solid. We laugh together. We parent well as a team. We have the same taste in terrible reality TV, and we split household duties without keeping score. I'm not painting us as perfect, but we work. Or we did, anyway, before this whole thing blew up in ways I never saw coming. The thing about Sarah is that she's anxious. Not clinically, as far as I know. She's never been diagnosed with anything, never seen a therapist about it, but it's there. It shows up in how she triple checks the locks at night, how she needs to arrive at the airport 3 hours early, how she keeps a binder of every medical record our kids have ever generated, organized by date and color-coded by type of visit. She makes lists for everything. Grocery lists, packing lists, lists of things we need to discuss, lists of lists. I've never minded it. Honestly, in a lot of ways, it balances me out. I'm more go with the flow, and she keeps us on track. When we first started dating, I found it endearing. She was organized and thoughtful in ways I wasn't. She remembered birthdays. She planned ahead. She thought about contingencies I never would have considered. It felt like having a partner who cared enough to think about the details, and I appreciated that about her. Except when it comes to driving. Sarah has always hated being in a car when she's not the one driving. Even before we got married, back when we were dating, she'd get tense on long drives. But I remember one of our first road trips together. We drove up to this cabin in the mountains for a weekend, and she spent the whole drive with her hand pressed against the doorframe, tensing every time we rounded a curve. I thought it was kind of cute at first, like she was nervous but trying to be brave about it. I'd reach over and squeeze her knee, tell her everything was fine, and she'd nod and smile, but I could feel how tight her muscles were under my hand. But over the years, it's gotten worse, a lot worse, and I think part of it is that we moved further away from her family about 5 years ago. We used to live 20 minutes from her parents. Back then, visits were easy, quick drives on surface streets, familiar routes, minimal traffic. Now it's a 3 to 4 hour drive depending on traffic. And that drive cuts straight through 2 major metro areas where the highways turn into parking lots without warning. The kind of traffic where you're doing 71 minute and completely stop the next, with no visible reason for the slowdown, and then suddenly it clears and everyone's flying again like nothing happened. The first few times we made the trip after the move, I noticed her reactions getting sharper. A little gasp here, a quick intake of breath there, but it was manageable. I'd tell her everything was fine. She'd nod. We'd keep going. I figured she'd adjust once the route became familiar, once she realized I could handle it. She didn't adjust. Then it started escalating. She'd grab the door handle when someone merged in front of us. She'd press her foot into the floor like she was working an imaginary brake pedal. She'd slap her hand flat against the dashboard whenever traffic compressed, even if we were still 50 feet from the car ahead. And the sounds she made, these sharp, involuntary gasps that would shoot through the car like little explosions. Every single one would spike my adrenaline, make me think something was actually wrong, that I'd missed something critical, and I'd have to force myself to scan the road again to confirm that no, everything was fine. She was just reacting to brake lights half a mile away. And the comments. God, the comments. Watch out! When there was nothing to watch out for. Babe, brake! When I was already braking. Too close! Too close! When I had a perfectly safe following distance. Sometimes she'd actually extend her arm and point at cars ahead of us like I couldn't see them. Like I wasn't the one looking at the road. I tried to be patient. I tried to understand. I know she doesn't love traffic. I know she gets anxious. But here's the thing. I'm a good driver. I've been driving for over 20 years. I've never had a ticket. Never been in an accident. Not even a fender bender in a parking lot. I'm careful. I leave space. I check my mirrors obsessively. I don't speed. I don't tailgate. I don't do anything that should make a passenger feel unsafe. But Sarah acts like I'm actively trying to kill us every time we're on the highway. I've tried talking to her about it multiple times, calmly. I'd wait until we were home, until the drive was over and tensions had cooled, and I'd bring it up gently. I'd choose my words carefully, trying not to sound accusatory or critical. Hey, when you gasp like that, as it actually makes it harder for me to concentrate. She'd go quiet for a second, then say, I can't help it. Traffic makes me nervous. I know, but I need you to trust me. I've got this. You drive too close. I don't. I really don't. You're going too fast. I'm going the speed limit, sometimes under it. Well, it doesn't feel safe to me. And that was always where the conversation would dead end. Because how do you argue with someone's feelings? She felt unsafe, and therefore, in her mind, she was unsafe. And nothing I said or did could bridge that gap. I could show her the space between our car and the next. I could point out that we'd made the drive dozens of times without incident. I could remind her of my clean driving record. None of it mattered. Her anxiety overrode everything else. The motion sickness made it worse. Sarah gets carsick if she's in the back seat, so she insists insists on sitting up front. She says being able to see the road helps her predict the movements of the car, helps her body adjust. She used to take Dramamine or Bonine, those over-the-counter motion sickness pills, but a few years ago, she had a bad reaction to one of them. I don't even remember which one. She broke out in hives, felt dizzy for hours, had to lie down in a dark room until it passed. She swore she'd never take motion sickness medication again. Fine, I got it. So she sits up front, except she's the worst front seat passenger I've ever had in my life. By the time New Year's rolled around, I was already dreading the drive. Sarah's parents had invited us to stay for a few days. They'd gone all out with decorations and planned activities for the kids, and I knew what that meant. Hours of white-knuckle tension while she performed her usual routine of panic and commentary. I thought about suggesting we fly, but the tickets were absurd for a family of 4 during the holidays, and besides, we'd need a car once we got there anyway. Renting would have added another few $100s we didn't really want to spend, so I resigned myself to it. Started mentally preparing days in advance, telling myself I could handle it, that it was just a few hours, that I'd survived it before and I'd survive it again. The morning we left, I loaded up the car while Sarah got the kids ready. It was cold, mid-30s, but a gray sky threatening snow, and I could already feel my shoulders tightening just thinking about the drive ahead. I packed the trunk with a kind of grim efficiency, fitting our bags and the kids' backpacks and the gifts we were bringing, like I was preparing for something I needed to endure rather than a family trip. We pulled out around 9 in the morning. Our son, Dylan, was in the front seat beside me, and Sarah was in the back with our daughter, Emma. I'd suggested this arrangement, thinking maybe it would be easier. Maybe if she was in the back, she'd relax. Maybe the distance from the windshield would somehow buffer her anxiety. It didn't work that way. Dylan had his headphones in, scrolling through something on his phone. Emma was reading a book, one of those thick fantasy novels she'd gotten for Christmas. Sarah was quiet. Boy, but I could feel her presence behind me like a physical weight. And it was fine. Peaceful, even. For about 45 minutes. Then we hit the first metro area. Traffic thickened. Brake lights bloomed ahead of us like a red rash spreading across the highway. I eased off the gas, left plenty of space, kept my movements smooth and predictable. I was in the middle lane, which I usually prefer because it gives you options. You're not trapped against the wall, but you're not dealing with constant merges from the on-ramps either. And Sarah started. A sharp inhale when someone changed lanes 100 feet ahead of us. A quiet oh when traffic slowed. Her hand gripping the back of my seat. I could feel the pressure through the headrest, her fingers digging into the fabric. I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw her staring forward, eyes wide, a body rigid. Sarah, we're fine, I said, keeping my voice level. You're too close, she said tightly. I wasn't. I had at least 4 car lengths between us and the SUV ahead, but I let another car length open up anyway, just to give her peace of mind, even though it meant someone immediately cut into the space I'd created. It didn't help. For the next 3.5 hours, she kept it up. Every merge, every brake light, every minor slowdown. She reacted like we were seconds from a pileup. At one point, when the traffic ground to a complete stop and I could see construction signs ahead, she actually said, "This is why I hate this drive," like the traffic was my fault, like I'd personally arranged for the construction to inconvenience her. Dylan pulled his headphones out at one point and looked back at her. "Mom, are you okay?" "I'm fine," she said, but her voice was strained, brittle. Emma, bless her, just kept reading and pretending not to notice, though I saw her glance up a few times when Sarah's reactions got particularly loud. The weather wasn't helping. Snow had started mixing with rain, those fat, wet flakes that turned to slush the second they hit the windshield. The roads were slick but not dangerous. Everyone was going slower, being more careful, but it meant traffic was even heavier than usual. I had the wipers on, the defroster running, and I was concentrating hard on keeping our car steady and predictable. By the time we pulled into her parents' driveway, my neck was so tight I could barely turn my head. I felt like I'd just finished a shift operating heavy machinery. That kind of exhausted where your body is tired but your mind is still buzzing with adrenaline. My hands ached from gripping the steering wheel. The visit itself was nice. Sarah's parents are good people. Her mom, Linda, cooked a huge dinner prime rib and roasted vegetables and this potato gratin that's been a family recipe for generations. Her dad, Tom, and I watched football in the living room while the kids played board games with their cousins. Sarah seemed to relax once we were out of the car, and for a couple of days, I almost forgot about the drive. We fell into the rhythm of visiting family late breakfasts, afternoon walks, evening games, staying up too late, talking, almost. But as the day we were supposed to leave got closer, I felt the dread creeping back in. I kept thinking about the drive home, about sitting there, trying to concentrate, while Sarah gasped and grabbed and acted like I was a danger to everyone on the road. I'd wake up in the middle of the night in their guest room, Sarah sleeping beside me, and I'd lie there staring at the ceiling thinking about 3.5 hours of tension. I couldn't do it again. I just couldn't. The morning we were set to leave, I was loading our bags into the trunk when Sarah came outside. The temperature had dropped overnight, and our breath made little clouds in the air. She was bundling Emma into her coat, and Dylan was already in the driveway with his backpack, playing some game on his phone. I closed the trunk and turned to her. "Hey," I said, "I need you to sit in the back on the way home." She froze, stared at me like I'd just told her I was leaving her.
"Oh, what?" "I need you to sit in the back." "Why?" I took a breath, tried to keep my voice steady, reasonable. "Because I can't
can't drive with you reacting the way you do. It's distracting. It's stressful. I need to be able to focus. Her face went red. I get car sick in the back. You know that. I know. But Dylan can sit up front. He's calm. He doesn't what? Her voice was sharp now. Defensive. Doesn't care if we get in an accident? We're not going to get in an accident. That's the whole point. I'm a safe driver, and I need to be able to concentrate without you acting like every car on the road is about to rear-end us. She glared at me. You're a jerk. The word hung in the cold air between us. I rubbed my face, tried to stay calm. Then you drive. She blinked. What? You drive. If I'm such a bad driver, if you're so nervous, then you take the wheel. I can't drive in traffic. You know I can't. Then take something and sleep. NyQuil, Benadryl, whatever. Just something so you can rest in the back and not... I'm not putting drugs in my body just because you can't handle a little feedback. Feedback? Sarah, you're not giving me feedback. You're panicking. For 3.5 hours straight. Her parents were standing in the doorway now, watching us. Tom had his coffee mug in one hand. Linda's face was tight with concern. Emma was holding her mom's hand, looking worried. Dylan was staring at his phone, pretending not to listen, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. Sarah's jaw was tight. Her eyes were shiny with tears that hadn't fallen yet. Finally, she sighed, long and dramatic, like I'd just ruined her entire life. Fine. She walked to the car. They opened the back door and climbed in next to Emma. The door slammed, hard enough that I felt it more than heard it. Dylan looked at me, eyebrows raised, silently asking if this was really happening. I gestured toward the front seat. He got in without a word, buckling his seatbelt and pulling out his phone in one smooth motion. I got behind the wheel, adjusted the mirrors, and pulled out of the driveway. I saw Tom and Linda still standing in the doorway, and Linda had her hand on Tom's arm, holding him back from, what, coming out to mediate, asking what was wrong, and the difference was immediate. Traffic was lighter on the way back, that post-holiday lull when everyone's already returned home and the roads feel almost empty. But even when it did slow down, the car stayed quiet. Dylan scrolled on his phone, occasionally showing me a funny video or meme. Emma hummed to herself in the back seat, probably already back in her fantasy world. Sarah said nothing. No gasps, no grabbing, no commentary, just silence. I felt my shoulders drop, felt the tension I didn't even realize I was holding start to ease. My jaw unclenched, my breathing deepened. I could think clearly, track multiple cars at once, make smooth lane changes without second-guessing myself. I could just drive. It was the most relaxed I'd felt behind the wheel in years. The whole way home, 3 hours and 40 minutes, she didn't say a single word. Not to me, not to the kids, nothing. I tried to engage her a few times, asking if she wanted to stop for lunch, if she needed anything, but she just shook her head without making eye contact. When we pulled into our driveway, Dylan and Emma grabbed their stuff and headed inside, Dylan giving me one last uncertain look before disappearing through the front door. I started unloading the trunk, hauling bags onto the porch. Sarah got out of the car slowly, and I could tell from the way she was moving, stiff, deliberate, that she was furious. I braced myself. I was sick the entire time, she said. I looked up from the trunk. What? Dizzy, nauseous, miserable. Her voice was shaking. I didn't say anything because I didn't want to make a big deal. Sarah, you humiliated me. Her eyes were wet now, tears starting to track down her cheeks. You made me sit in the back like a child, in front of your son, in front of my parents. You chose your comfort over my well-being. That's not... A good husband would have just dealt with it. Her voice cracked. Yeah, you should have been more considerate of my feelings. And the way she said it, the look on her face, the tremble in her voice, it made it sound like I'd done something cruel, like I'd punished her instead of protecting us. That night, she barely spoke to me. We unpacked in silence. She slept on her side of the bed, facing away, curled into herself. I lay there staring at the dark ceiling, replaying the whole thing in my head, wondering if I'd made a terrible mistake. When I tried to talk to her the next morning over coffee, she gave me one-word answers. Yes, no, fine, whatever. The kids noticed. Dylan asked if we were fighting. I told him we were working through something, which felt both true and completely inadequate. But it got worse. 2 days later, I got a text from Sarah's mom. Sarah told me what happened on the drive home. I think you owe her an apology. I stared at the message, feeling my stomach drop. The fact that Linda was texting me directly, without even talking to Sarah first, without asking, my side that told me everything I needed to know about what story Sarah had told. I called her, tried to explain my side, told her about the years of Sarah's reactions, the stress, the distraction, how it had been building for so long. Linda listened. Then she said, quietly, she was scared, and you embarrassed her. I wasn't trying to embarrass her. I was trying to get us home safely. I understand that, but you have to see how it looked, how it felt to her. I hung up feeling worse than before. I realized Sarah had been calling her family, telling them her version, painting me as the bad guy who'd forced his wife into the back seat like she was being punished, or who'd chosen his own comfort over her physical well-being. Over the next few days, it escalated. Sarah started bringing up other things, old arguments, times I'd been insensitive. That time 2 years ago when I'd forgotten our anniversary dinner. That time I'd made a joke she didn't find funny. Times when I'd chosen work over family. Times when I hadn't supported her the way she needed. She said this was part of a pattern, that I didn't value her feelings, that I was dismissive of her anxiety. I felt blindsided, like I was suddenly being prosecuted for crimes I didn't even know I'd committed. Then, one night about a week after we got back, Dylan came to me while I was in the garage pretending to organize tools. Dad? Yeah, bud. He was quiet for a moment, shifting his weight. Mom's reactions in the car. They do make it hard to focus, right? I looked at him, surprised. You noticed? Everyone notices, he said quietly. quietly. She does it to me too when I'm learning to drive. Every time I practice with her, she grabs the door and tells me I'm going too fast or too close or something. It makes me more nervous. That hit me harder than anything else had. I hadn't realized she was doing it to Dylan during his practice sessions, that she was passing her anxiety on to him at a time when he needed confidence more than anything. A week after we got back, I was cleaning out the car and found Sarah's phone in the seat pocket. She'd left it there by accident after taking Emma to soccer practice. I wasn't trying to snoop, I really wasn't, but it was open to a text thread with her sister, and I saw my name. I shouldn't have read it. I know that, but I did. What? He made me sit in the back like I'm nothing. I've never been so humiliated in my life. And below that, I'm documenting everything. If this gets worse, I want a record. Documenting. Like I was abusive. Like this was the beginning of something that might escalate to the point where she'd need evidence. I felt sick. I confronted her that night after the kids went to bed. Asked her why she was telling everyone I'd humiliated her when all I'd done was try to drive safely. She said I was gaslighting her. Said I was making her feel crazy for having legitimate concerns about safety. They're not legitimate, I said, and I could hear my voice rising. I've been driving for 20 years without an accident. You act like I'm going to kill us every time we get on the highway. Because you drive like you don't care if something happens. I drive carefully. I leave space. I follow the rules. What more do you want? I want you to understand that I'm scared. I do understand. But your fear is affecting me. It's affecting Dylan. It's making it dangerous because I can't concentrate. The fight spiraled. I brought up how her anxiety was affecting me, affecting Dylan, how she needed to work on managing it instead of expecting everyone else to accommodate it. She accused me of being unsupportive, of not caring about her mental health, of choosing my convenience over her safety. We went to bed angry, slept in the same bed but miles apart. The next morning, over coffee in our silent kitchen, she said, I think we need to see someone. I looked up. Like a therapist? Couples therapy. We need help with this. I agreed immediately. I wanted a neutral third party, someone who could help us navigate this, who could see both sides without the history and baggage we'd accumulated. We found a therapist, Dr. Patterson, a woman in her 50s who specialized in couples therapy and anxiety management. Our first appointment was on a Tuesday evening. In that first session, Dr. Patterson asked Sarah to describe what happened. She told the story, the drive, the back seat, how she felt humiliated and dismissed. She cried while she talked about it, and I sat there feeling like a monster. Then Dr. Patterson asked me. I explained the years of reactions, the stress, the distraction, how I genuinely felt unsafe trying to drive with her constant panic, how every gasp made my heart race, how I'd spend the entire drive tense and exhausted instead of focused and calm, how I'd tried talking to her about it multiple times and nothing had changed. Dr. Patterson nodded slowly, taking notes. Then she asked Sarah, do you trust your husband's driving? Sarah hesitated. I trust him. I just don't trust other drivers. But your reactions are directed at your husband. You're gasping at him, grabbing the dashboard, telling him to brake. How is that about other drivers? Because he's the one in control. He's the one who can prevent something bad from happening. Can he control other drivers? No, but he can react to them. And do you believe he's capable of reacting appropriately? Another hesitation. I don't know. Maybe not fast enough. Has he ever been in an accident? No. Has he ever gotten a ticket? No. So his track record suggests he's a safe, responsible driver? Yes, but that doesn't mean. What does it mean to trust someone? Dr. Patterson asked gently. Sarah was quiet. The therapist looked at me. How does it feel when she reacts that way? Like she doesn't trust me, I said. Like no matter what I do, it's not good enough. Like I'm failing her somehow just by driving normally. We spent weeks in therapy, unpacking Sarah's anxiety, exploring where it came from. Her dad had been in a serious car accident when she was young, something she'd never really talked about, something I'd only known in passing. She'd seen the aftermath, the months of recovery, and it had lodged itself in her brain as a constant what if. We discussed how her reactions affected me, how they created a feedback loop where her anxiety made me tense, which probably made my driving less smooth, which made her more anxious. Dr. Patterson had us do exercises. Sarah would practice breathing techniques to manage her anxiety in the moment. I would practice not reacting defensively when she did get nervous. Slowly, things started to shift. Sarah admitted she hadn't realized how intense her reactions were, how they'd escalated over time. She said she'd thought she was just being vigilant, being cautious, being a responsible passenger. She agreed to try medication for the motion sickness again, with a different formula. We started with just short drives to the grocery store, to the kids' schools, with her in the back seat. She'd take the medication and bring a pillow and try to relax. And it helped. She started therapy on her own, working through the anxiety that had been running her life in ways she hadn't fully recognized. She talked about her dad's accident, about other fears she'd been carrying, about the way anxiety had convinced her that hypervigilance was the same as safety. It's been 3 months now. We're better. Not perfect, but better. There are still moments when she tenses up. Still times when I can see her fighting the urge to gasp or grab, but she's working on it. Really working on it. Last week, we drove to her parents again. Sarah sat in the back, took her medication, slept most of the way. When she woke up, she was calm, rested. She even made a joke about how she drooled on her pillow. On the way home, about an hour from our house, she asked if she could sit up front for the last stretch, and I said yes. We pulled over at a rest stop. Dylan switched to the back. Sarah got in the front seat. She was quiet the whole time. No gasps, no grabbing, just sat there, looking out the window, occasionally commenting on the scenery or asking about upcoming exits. thoughts. When we pulled into the driveway, she turned to me. "I'm sorry," she said, "for how I've been, for how I made you feel, for not realizing how bad it had gotten." I nodded, feeling something tight in my chest loosen. "I'm sorry too, for how I handled it, for making you feel humiliated. You were trying to keep us safe." I was, but I could have talked to you about it differently. Before we were standing in your parents' driveway. She smiled a little. "Yeah, that wasn't ideal timing. We're still working on it. Still going to therapy every other week. Still figuring out how to navigate the things that trigger her, how to communicate better, how to be a team even when we're stressed. Sarah's working on her anxiety with her individual therapist. I'm working on being more patient, more understanding, more aware of when I need to voice my needs before they become emergencies. Dylan has started driving practice with me instead of Sarah. We're planning to ease her into it once his skills improve, once he's more confident. But for now, it's just easier this way. And honestly, that's all I can ask for. We're trying. We're showing up. We're doing the work. Marriage isn't about never having conflict. It's about how you handle it when it comes, and we're handling it. Maybe not perfectly, but we're handling it together. If anything else happens, I might update. But for now, we're okay. Well, we're figuring it out. And if you read all this, if you made it to the end, thanks. It means more than you know.